Take picture. Pause recording. Face centered. Speech off.
Greetings, everyone. This is your friend Pastor Mark with you once again, bringing you some more of The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom, thanks to the Bible Broadcasting Network, and you can find them at bbnradio.org. And now let's get started, if we may, with Chapter 7. We're so glad you're here.
From the studios of the Bible Broadcasting Network, we present Christian Classics, reading from a book that has influenced the lives of many people. Our narrator is Lynn Brooks.
Today we'll be reading Chapter 7 from The Hiding Place. It was 4 months after Tante Jan's funeral that the long-awaited invitation came to Willem's first sermon. After less than a year as assistant to a minister, he had been given a church of his own in Brabant, the beautiful rural southern part of Holland. And in the Dutch Reformed Church, a minister's first sermon in his first church was the most solemn, joyous, emotional occasion that an unemotional people could conceive. Family and friends would come from great distances and stay for days. From his own assistant pastorate, Carol wrote that he would be there and looked forward to seeing us all again. I endowed that word all with special meaning and pressed dresses and packed trunks in a delirium of anticipation. It was one of Mama's bad times. She huddled in the corner of our train compartment, the hand that gripped Father's, whitening at the knuckles each time the train lurched or swayed. But while the rest of us gazed out at long rows of poplars in their bright June green, Mama's eyes never left the sky. What to us was a trip through the country, to her was a feast of clouds and light and infinite blue distances. Both the village of Maid and the congregation of Willem's church had declined in recent years, but the church building itself, dating back to better days, was large, and so was Willem and Tyne's house across the street. Indeed, by Bayes standards, it was enormous. For the first few nights, the ceiling seemed so far overhead that I could not sleep. Uncles and cousins and friends arrived each day, but no matter how many people moved in, the rooms always looked to me half empty. 3 days after we got there, I answered the front door knocker, and there stood Carol, coal dust from the train trip, still speckling his shoulders. He tossed his brown carpet bag past me into the hall, seized my hand, and drew me out into the June sunshine. "It's a lovely day in the country, Corrie. Come walking." From then on, it seemed taken for granted that Carol and I would go walking each day. Each time, we wandered a little farther down the country lanes that wound in every direction away from the village. The dirt beneath our feet so different from the brick streets of Haarlem. It was hard to believe, at such moments, that the rest of Europe was locked in the bloodiest war in history. Even across the ocean, the madness seemed to be spreading. The papers said America would enter. Here, in neutral Holland, one sunlit June day followed another. Only a few people, like Willem, insisted that the war was Holland's tragedy, too. His first sermon was on this theme. Europe and the world were changing, he said. No matter which side won, a way of life was gone forever. I looked around at his congregation of sturdy villagers and farmers and saw that they did not care for such ideas. After the sermon, friends and more distant families started home, but Carol lingered on. Our walks lasted longer. Often we talked about Carol's future, and suddenly we were speaking not about what Carol was going to do, but about what we were going to do. We imagined that we had a huge old manse like this one to decorate, and rejoiced to discover that we had the same ideas about furniture, flowers, even the same favorite colors. Only about children did we disagree. Carol wanted 4, while I held out stubbornly for 6. And all this while, the word marriage was never spoken. One day, when Carol was in the village, Willem came out of the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Tyne, with a cup of her own, was just behind him. Corey, Willem said, handing me the coffee and speaking as though with effort. Has Carol led you to believe that he is serious? Tyne finished his sentence for him. The hateful blush that I could never control set my cheeks burning. No. Why? Willem's face reddened too. Because, Corey, this is something that can never be. You don't know Carol's family. They've wanted one thing since he was a small child. They've sacrificed for it, planned for it, built their whole lives around it. Carol is to marry well, is the way I think they put it. The big, barren parlor seemed suddenly emptier still. But what about what Carol wants? He's not a small child now. Willem fixed his sober, deep-set eyes on mine. He will do it, Corey. I don't say he wants it. To him, it's just a fact of life like any other. When we'd talk about girls we liked at the university, he'd always say at the end, "Of course, I could never marry her. It would kill my mother." The hot coffee scalded my mouth, but I gulped it down and made my escape to the garden. I hated that gloomy old house, and sometimes I almost hated Willem for always seeing the dark, hard side of things. Here in the garden, it was different. There wasn't a bush, hardly a flower that Carol and I hadn't looked at together, that didn't have a bit of our feeling for each other still clinging to it. Willem might know more than I did about theology and war and politics, but when it came to romance, things like money, social prestige, family expectations, why, in the books they vanished like rain clouds, every time. Carol left Maid a week or so later, and his last words made my heart soar. Only months afterward did I remember how strangely he spoke them. The urgency, almost desperation in his voice. We were standing in the driveway of the manse waiting for the horse and cart, which Maid still regarded as the only dependable conveyance when there was a train to be caught. We had said goodbye after breakfast, and if part of me was disappointed that he still had not proposed, another part of me was content just to be beside him. Now, suddenly, in the driveway, he seized both my hands. "Corey, write to me," he said, but not gaily, pleadingly. "Write me about the Bay. I want to know everything. I want every detail of that ugly, beautiful, crumbling old house. Write about your father, Corey. Write how he forgets to send the bills. Oh, Corey, it's the happiest home in Holland." And so it was, indeed, when Father, Mama, Betsy, Nolly, Tanta Anna, and I returned. It had always been a happy place, but now each little event seemed to glow because I could share it with Carol. Every meal I cooked was an offering to him, each shining pot a poem, every sweep of the broom an act of love. His letters did not come as often as mine went singing to him, but I put this down to his work. The minister he was assisting, he wrote, had turned the parish calling over to him. It was a wealthy congregation, and large contributors expected frequent and unhurried visits from the clergy. As time went by, his letters came more seldom. I made up for it with mine and went humming my way through the summer and fall. One glorious, nippy November day, when all of Holland was singing with me, the doorbell rang. I was washing the lunch dishes in the kitchen, but I ran through the dining room and down the steps before the rest of the family could stir. I flung open the alley door, and there was Carol. Beside him was a young woman. She stood smiling at me. I took in the hat with its sweeping feather, the ermine collar, the white-gloved hand resting on his arm. Then a blur seemed to move over the scene, for Carol was saying, "Corey, I want you to meet my fiancé." I must have said something. I must have led them up to Tante Jan's front room that we used now as a parlor. I only recall how my family came to the rescue, talking, shaking hands, taking coats, finding chairs so that I would not have to do or say anything. Mama broke even her own record for making coffee. Tante Anna passed cakes. Betsy engaged the young woman in a discussion of winter fashions, and Father pinned Carol in a corner with questions of the most international and impersonal nature. What did he make of the news that President Wilson was sending American troops to France? Somehow the half hour passed. Somehow I managed to shake her hand, and Carol's hand, and to wish them every happiness. Betsy took them down to the door. Before it clicked shut, I was fleeing up the stairs to my own room at the top of the house where the tears could come. How long I lay on my bed sobbing for the one love of my life, I do not know. Later, I heard Father's footsteps coming up the stairs. For a moment, I was a little girl again, waiting for him to tuck the blankets tight. But this was a hurt that no blanket could shut out. Suddenly, I was afraid of what Father would say. Afraid he would say there'll be someone else soon, and that forever afterward this untruth would lie between us. For in some deep part of me, I knew already that there would not, soon or ever, be anyone else. The sweet cigar smell came into the room with Father, and of course he did not say the false, idle words. Corey, do you know what hurts so very much? It's love. Love is the strongest force in the world. And when it is blocked, that means pain. There are two things we can do when this happens. We can kill the love so that it stops hurting. But then, of course, part of us dies too. Or, Corey, we can ask God to open up another route for that love to travel. God loves Carol even more than you do. And if you ask him, he will give you his love for this man. A love nothing can prevent, nothing destroy. Whenever we cannot love in the old human way, Corey, God can give us the perfect way. I did not know, as I listened to Father's footsteps winding back down the stairs, that he had given me more than the key to this hard moment. I did not know that he had put into my hands the secret that would open far darker rooms than this. Places where there was not, on a human level, anything to love at all. I was still in kindergarten in these matters of love. My task just then was to give up my feeling for Carol without giving up the joy and wonder that had grown with it. And so that very hour, lying there in my bed, I whispered the enormous prayer. Lord, I give to you the way I feel about Carol. My thoughts about our future. Oh, you know everything. Give me your way of seeing Carol instead. Help me to love him that way. That much. And even as I said the words, I fell asleep. Today on Christian Classics, we have been reading from The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom with John and Elizabeth Sherrill, published by the Fleming H. Revell Company.
You've been listening to Christian Classics, narrated by Lynn Brooks. This has been a production of the Bible Broadcasting Network.
Now for Monday, January 5th, is that right? Monday, Thursday's the first, Friday's the second, Saturday's third, yeah. Monday the 5th, January 2026, The Hiding Place.
From the studios of the Bible Broadcasting Network, we present Christian Classics, reading from a book that has influenced the lives of many people. Our narrator is Lynn Brooks.
Today we'll be reading Chapter 8 from The Hiding Place. I was standing on a chair washing the big window in the dining room, waving now and then to passers-by in the alley, while in the kitchen Mama peeled potatoes for lunch. It was 1918. The dreadful war was finally over. Even in the way people walked, you could sense a new hope in the air. It wasn't like Mama, I thought, to let the water keep running that way. She never wasted anything. Corey. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Yes, Mama. Corey, she said again, and then I heard the water spilling out of the sink onto the floor. I jumped down from the chair and ran into the kitchen. Mama stood with her hand on the faucet, staring strangely at me while the water splashed from the sink over her feet. What is it, Mama? I cried, reaching for the faucet. I pried her fingers loose, shut off the water, and drew her away from the puddle on the floor. Corey, she said again. Mama, you're ill. We've got to get you to bed. Corey. I put an arm beneath her shoulder and guided her through the dining room and up the stairs. At my cry, Tanta Anna came running down them and caught Mama's other arm. Together we got her onto her bed, and then I raced down to the shop for Father and Betsy. For an hour, the four of us watched the effect of the cerebral hemorrhage spread slowly over her body. The paralysis seemed to affect her hands first, traveling from them along her arms and then down into her legs. Dr. Van Veen, for whom the apprentice had gone running, could do no more than we. Mama's consciousness was the last thing to go, her eyes remaining open and alert, looking lovingly at each one of us, until very slowly they closed, and we were sure she was gone forever. Dr. Van Veen, however, said that this was only a coma, very deep, from which she could slip either into death or back to life. For 2 months, Mama lay unconscious on that bed, the five of us, Finale on the evening shift, taking turns at her side. And then one morning, as unexpectedly as the stroke had come, her eyes opened, and she looked around her. Eventually, she regained the use of her arms and legs enough to be able to move about with assistance, though her hands would never again hold her crochet hook or knitting needles. We moved her out of the tiny bedroom facing the brick wall, down to Tanta Jan's front room, where she could watch the busy life of the street. Her mind, it was soon clear, was as active as ever, but the power of speech did not return, with the exception of 3 words. Mama could say yes, no, and, perhaps because it was the last one she had pronounced, Corey. And so Mama called everybody Corey. To communicate, she and I invented a little game, something like 20 questions. Corey, she would say. What is it, Mama? You're thinking of someone? Yes. Someone in the family? No. Somebody you saw on the street? Yes. Was it an old friend? Yes. A man? No. A woman Mama had known for a long time. Mama, I'll bet it's someone's birthday. And I would call out names until I heard her delighted yes. Then I would write a little note saying that Mama had seen the person and wished her a happy birthday. At the close, I always put the pen in her stiffened fingers so she could sign it. An angular scrawl was all that was left of her beautiful curling signature, but it was soon recognized and loved all over Harlem. It was astonishing, really, the quality of life she was able to lead in that crippled body. And watching her during the 3 years of her paralysis, I made another discovery about love. Mama's love had always been the kind that acted itself out with soup pot and sewing basket. But now that these things were taken away, the love seemed as whole as before. She sat in her chair at the window and loved us. She loved the people she saw in the street and beyond. Her love took in the city, the land of Holland, the world. And so I learned that love is larger than the walls which shut it in. More and more often, Nolly's conversation at the dinner table had been about a young fellow teacher at the school where she taught, Flip Van Woerden. By the time Mr. Van Woerden paid the formal call on Father, Father had rehearsed and polished his little speech of blessing a dozen times. The night before the wedding, as Betsy and I lifted her into bed, Mama suddenly burst into tears. With 20 questions, we discovered that, no, she was not unhappy about the marriage. Yes, she liked Flip very much. It was that the solemn mother-daughter talk promised over the years for this night was now not possible. In the end, that night, it was Tanta Anna who mounted the stairs to Nolly's room, eyes wide and cheeks aflame. Years before, Nolly had moved from our room at the top of the stairs down to Tanta Bep's little nook, and there she and Tanta Anna were closeted for the prescribed half hour. There could have been no one in all Holland less informed about marriage than Tanta Anna, but this was ritual, the older woman counseling the younger one down through the centuries. One could no more have got married without it than one could have dispensed with a ring. Nolly was radiant the following day in her long white dress. But it was Mama I could not take my eyes off of. Dressed in black as always, she was nevertheless suddenly young and girlish, eyes sparkling with joy at this greatest occasion the Ten Booms had ever held. Betsy and I took her into the church early, and I was sure that most of the Van Woerden family and friends never dreamed that the gracious and smiling lady in the first pew could neither walk alone nor speak. It was not until Nolly and Flip came down the aisle together that I thought for the very first time of my own dreams of such a moment with Carol. I glanced at Betsy, sitting so tall and lovely on the other side of Mama. Betsy had always known that, because of her health, she could not have children, and for that reason had decided long ago never to marry. Now I was 27, Betsy in her mid-30s, and I knew that this was the way it was going to be. Betsy and I, the unmarried daughters, living at home in the Bayeux. It was a happy thought, not a sad one. And that was the moment when I knew for sure that God had accepted the faltering gift of my emotions made 4 years ago. For with the thought of Carol, all shining round with love as thoughts of him had been since I was 14, came not the slightest trace of hurt. Bless Carol, Lord Jesus, I murmured under my breath, and bless her. Keep them close to one another and to you. And that was a prayer I knew for sure that could not have sprung unaided from Corrie ten Boom. But the great miracle of the day came later. To close the service, we had chosen Mama's favorite hymn, Fairest Lord Jesus. And now, as I stood singing it, I heard, behind me in the pew, Mama's voice singing too. Word after word, verse after verse, she joined in. Mama, who could not speak 4 words, singing the beautiful lines without a stammer. Her voice, which had been so high and clear, was hoarse and cracked. But to me, it was the voice of an angel. All the way through she sang, while I stared straight ahead, not daring to turn around for fear of breaking the spell. When at last everyone sat down, Mama's eyes, Betsy's and mine were brimming with tears. At first, we hoped it was the beginning of Mama's recovery. But the words she had sung, she was not able to say, nor did she ever sing again. It had been an isolated moment, a gift to us from God, His own very special wedding present. 4 weeks later, asleep with a smile on her lips, Mama slipped away from us. Forever. It was in late November that year that a common cold made a big difference. Betsy began to sniff and sneeze, and Father decided that she must not sit behind the cashier's table where the shop door let in the raw winter air. But Christmas was coming, the shop's busiest time, with Betsy bundled up in bed. I took to running down to the shop as often as I could to wait on customers and wrap packages, and save Father clambering up and down from his tall workbench a dozen times an hour. Tanta Anna insisted she could cook and look after Betsy, and so I settled in behind Betsy's table, writing down sales and repair charges, recording cash spent for parts and supplies, and leafing through past records in growing disbelief. But there was no system here anywhere. No way to tell whether a bill had been paid or not, whether the price we were asking was high or low. No way, in fact, to tell if we were making money or losing it. I hurried down the street to the bookseller one wintry afternoon, bought a whole new set of ledgers, and started in to impose method on madness. Many nights, after the door was locked and the shutters closed, I sat on in the flickering gaslight, poring over old inventories and wholesaler statements. Or I would question Father. "How much did you charge Mr. Hogue for that repair work last month?" Father would look at me blankly. "Why, my dear, I can't really." "Oh, Father, it was an old one. You had to send all the way to Switzerland for the parts. And here's their bill," and his face lit up. "Of course I remember. Oh, beautiful watch, Corey. A joy to work on. Very old, only he'd let dust get into it. Oh, a fine watch must be kept clean, my dear. But how much did you charge, Father?" I developed a system of billing, and increasingly my columns of figures began to correspond to actual transactions. And increasingly, I discovered that I loved it. I had always felt happy in this little shop with its tiny voices and shelves of small, shining faces, but now I discovered that I liked the business side of it too. Liked catalogs and stock listings, liked the whole busy, energetic world of trade. Every now and then, when I remembered that Betsy's cold settled in her chest and threatened, as hers always did, to turn into pneumonia, I would reproach myself for being anything but distressed at the present arrangement. And at night, when I would hear the hard, racking cough from her bedroom below, I would pray with all my heart for her to be better at once. And then one evening, 2 days before Christmas, when I had closed up the shop for the night and was locking the hallway door, Betsy came bursting in from the alley with her arms full of flowers. Her eyes, when she saw me there, were like a guilty child's. "Oh, for Christmas, Corey? Oh, we have to have flowers for Christmas." "Betsy ten Boom, how long has this been going on? No wonder you're not getting better. I've stayed in bed most of the time, honestly." She stopped while great coughs shook her. "I've only got up for really important things." I put her to bed and then prowled the rooms with new opened eyes, looking for Betsy's important things. How little I had really noticed about the house. Betsy had wrought changes everywhere. And so was established the pattern our lives were to follow for over 20 years. Today on Christian Classics, we have been reading from The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom with John and Elizabeth Sherrill, published by the Fleming H. Revell Company.
You've been listening to Christian Classics, narrated by Lynn Brooks. This has been a production of the Bible Broadcasting Network.
And so we conclude with our reading for this video, The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. And if you're looking to get in touch with some of the other programs that the Bible Broadcasting Network has to offer, again, they may be found at bbnradio.org. And their phone number is 1-800-888-7077. God bless you. We love you. We appreciate you. And the Lord loves you more. Till next time, so long and have a great day.
Speech on. Frame camera control. Take pause recorded. Face 30 minute. Face pause. Take picture. Stop recording video.